Good morning, everybody. Well, that's new. I know there's a Dollar General here in Rileyville, Pennsylvania. They just pop up like mushrooms in the rain. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something that I missed yesterday that I had planned to participate in. Every year, and I participate in this for a few years, and yesterday I wasn't able to. Since I've been a rabbi, there's always been some sort of a Rosh Hashanah event from the president, and also from, if it's an election year, who's ever running against the president. And I participated in Obama's event when I was a rabbi in Richmond, Virginia. Listened to how he pronounced Shana Tova like with a little bit of Ashkenazi accent. He didn't say Shana Tova, he said Shana Tova, which was interesting. Mr. Obama's influence there, and some other. And I remember the same time it was McCain was running, and I listened to Mr. McCain's program for Rosh Hashanah, and I remember Rabbi Shlomo Riskin called in, and Joe Biden, who was good friends with McCain, he was like, I remember how it was. They let different people talk. Anybody could really talk there with McCain's rabbi call. It wasn't just a rabbi. Like, I think Obama's one was for rabbis, and McCain's one was really for anyone in the Jewish community who wanted to listen. And this the call screen or whatever, she said there's someone, Shlomo Riskin, who's calling. And then Joe Lieberman was like, you could hear over it was on the phone, you couldn't see it, but you could like hear his eyes. It's like, this is one of the biggest rabbis in the world. So anyway, the one thing they never did, as much as they pandered about Israel. And I love President Trump, and I'm voting for him because he's good for America, and I'm not going to let what's going on for a small, almost insignificant minority of people, even if I happen to be a member of that demographic, color this when it's so fundamentally different between what President Trump, has accomplished in these 4 years, and will continue to accomplish if he's reelected, and the reversal that a Harris-Biden administration, as it's been called recently, would wreak on America and on the world. Because the truth is, America is that shining city on the hill, as President Reagan said, paraphrasing from the Christian Bible. And with that being said, if America falls, the world will suffer. So this is something that's very, very important. So I'm not going to color the fact that President Trump has said some stupid things about American Jews vis-a-vis Israel. Are we really supposed to be in this left lane this far down? Well, there hasn't been a sign road work ending, so I'm going to assume yes. But anyway, there we go. There's a dead skunk here. So in any event, now we're back where we belong. So in any event, I was unable to listen to President Trump's address yesterday that he had for the Jewish faith leaders. Even though I had RSVP to participate in that, and I planned on attending, and then unfortunately I had an emergency at work that I had to attend to, so I was unable to listen to this telephone call. I love how on these phone calls it says, this is not a press event, and any members of the press are kindly asked to leave, and you shouldn't be reporting what took place on this phone call to the press, which is interesting because in general the Trump administration has been the most transparent, the most accessible, probably in American history. That's not a guzma, that's not an exaggeration. I have to excuse my door is making a lot of noise because I locked my keys in the car yesterday, and the wonderful people from Tinek Chaverim came to rescue me. There were two Yingalite who came to open up my car, but now there's that it's a little open up here, so I'm gonna have to get that fixed maybe. So I don't know if you can hear the thing here. You know the thing, as Joe Biden would say, right? Come on, man. So anyway, I'm a little tired too because I got home late because of that. I was trying to stay up to finish my Mishnayos shir. I try to learn every day 3 parakim of Mishnayos, in addition to a lot of other things I learned. And I had only done about 1.5 by the time I was in bed, and I was fighting myself, half awake, half asleep, till I finally finished my Mishnayos. I finished the Masechtas Negoim and the Shutaka. We know the schus of these Masechtas of Negoim and Holos, and that what the Yismach Moshe says, my Rebbe, Badal Chaim Tovim L'Kalav Rebbe Shlitul Refuah Shleima, he always talks about this inyan of how through Torah learning one can accomplish the removal of Yisurim, because we suffer through the Torah learning. In a sense, we experience it mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and accomplish this. So anyway, I'm going off topic because I'm so tired and distracted. But I want to get back to what I'm talking about here. Anyway, and this is part of like what Rabbi Bar Tzadok talks about, the oscillating consciousness. He calls Seichel Tenuah. That's his own chiddush. Which really, when you learn Gemara, you learn Chazal, you see Chazal, they'll go off on these tangents through word associations and so forth, and develop these. That's an old Torah tradition, is to have this approach in teaching. But I want to get back to the subject that I was discussing. So apparently the president did it again. We discussed this in a previous video. I think it might have been my last video. I'm not making as many videos as I used to, and I should make more. Especially it's almost the Yom Adin, it's almost Rosh Hashanah, and there's a lot of things to talk about. But the truth is, I'm very spiritually removed. I'm in a very low spiritual state. I need to do tshuva. I need to come back. But I'm working on it. So, Baruch Hashem, I still keep up with my learning. To Black Gemara every day, 3 Mishnayos, Tanakh, and so forth. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this that Afal Pichein, with all that, with all of this devotion, I'm still mamish shol tachtis, and I have to call out unto the Rebbeinu Shalom through the slichus and do tshuva, and we all do. And it's really quite embarrassing that we have this situation with the coronavirus, Kadima, and not embracing this call to tshuva that I have to embrace, and I regret this, and I'm trying to be better, and I ask B'nai Shalom's Hafoich, Avinu Seinem Shen L'Schus. I'm such a choyte machte, mamish lo slow. Rafal Pichein, I'm trying my best to come back, and every day it's Shiva Teen. For Zoifil Avedris Ad Ein L'Shoyer. Anyway, back to the subject. Apparently, I didn't hear it myself, but the report is that the president, he should be well and he should be blessed, and I wish him only the best. But he said some kind of a comment, speaking to mostly Jewish Americans, and he said, "I really love your country, Israel." And that on its own could be innocuous, but in the past, I don't know about this time, but in the past, President Trump was talking to American Jewish audiences, and he said something about when he was talking about Bibi Netanyahu, and he would refer to him as your prime minister. And so someone asked, what exactly was it that the president said that's so upsetting? But Afal Pichein, I'll still vote for him, despite this tremendous avla. I'm still going to vote for him because he's good for America. I know a lot of people who probably fit into this category that he's talking about, who they say they're voting for him because he's good for Israel. I don't give a damn about Israel. I'm an American. Yes, I love my fellow Orthodox Jews, and many of them happen to live in the Holy Land that's currently under the occupation of the heretical regime that calls itself Medinat Yisrael, that stole our name, that engaged in identity theft on a national level, because Judaism is a religion and not a race. And so these atheists, these communists that made this Medina, they have no right to use that name. It's a copyright infringement. And not only that, but it's put Jewish lives in danger. Over 20, and how many thousands and thousands of Jews have been killed since 1948 because of this? And not only that, but I know people always say, oh, if there was a state of Israel, the 6 million would have run there. It's just the opposite, which we could talk about. But historically, the truth is, if it wasn't for the Zionist movement, millions of Jews probably could have gone to the Holy Land as refugees, as long as they were going humbly as refugees and accepting dimitude, instead of insisting on coming as conquerors. And that's what doomed the 6 million. This is not me saying this. This is Bibi Netanyahu said this. That he said that it was the Mufti of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem, who gave the idea to Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, the final solution, because Hitler wanted to expel the Jews, and he was discussing about sending to Eretz Yisrael. And the Mufti, he said, if they would have been coming as like the old Yishuv, as peaceful people who were coming for religious devotion, or at the very least with no intention of taking over, and they would have remained, under the rule of whatever the ruling government was. As Muslims, they would have to accept that. But if they were trying to take something over, that would be under the Dar al-Islam according to their doctrines. Even if we disagree with the doctrines, we have to be realistic politically. This is not even a spiritual issue, because the Gemara says "Ani matir b'sarchem." It's a political issue. It's put the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael in danger because they and all over the world, because they had nowhere to go, and they could have gone to Eretz Yisrael if only they would have gone as refugees and not as conquerors, and all 6 million could have been saved. And also, not only that, but a lot of the Zionist organizations pressured America and other countries not to take Jewish refugees because they wanted the Jews to die in the Holocaust so that after the war they'd get their Medina. This is what this is not a conspiracy theory. This is what what's the guy's name? He was the Nasi, the first Nasi. Einstein. He turned it down. It was Chaim Weizmann, who was the first president of the State of Israel, which is more a ceremonial position, kind of akin to like the Queen of England, and it's not a political position like the Rosh Mimshala, like the Prime Minister. But this Weizmann, he wrote back in the 30s, before the Holocaust, he said that he didn't want the religious Jews to come ruin his Tel Aviv and turn it into a low-grade ghetto, and that they would be dust on the wheels of history, and by their death, then the world would have mercy after the war, which was inevitable. After their lives were snuffed out in the genocide and the Holocaust, that they would be able, then the Zionists would be able to say, look, all these Jews died, give us our Medina. And that was their plan. And they made this person who wrote this in Young Judea magazine in the 1930s, they made him the first president of the State of Israel, because Albert Einstein turned it down when they offered it to him. And as someone who wrote something so hateful against Orthodox Jews, he's a real Jewish anti-Semite, and they made him the first president of the Zionist state. So it shows where they're at, these people. Not to mention all the things that they did, what they did to the Yemenite Jews, what they did to the Iranian Jews, the horrible racist things that these communists did to pious Jews who lived, in a lifestyle that was akin to biblical times, like the Jews in Yemen. You want to see what life was like in the times of King David. You could have seen the Yemenite Jews, and then they go and steal away the children. This has been proven now. Actually, Netanyahu was released a lot of the documents. This had been a rumor for a long time, and Netanyahu released officially the documents because it was done, of course, by the leftists, by the Avodah, the Labor Party, and so him from Likud, he wanted to besmirch their legacy, but it's a collective Zionist legacy, to be honest. What they did, what the State of Israel did to the Yemenite Jews, stealing away children, telling parents their children died, and giving the children away to communists, to atheists, and to raise them, and cut off their payas, and they make them eat treif, and make them be Michal Shabbos. This is what happened in the Holy Land by the hands of the Zionist regime. And so when it's very hurtful when President Trump, and maybe someone will show this to him, when President Trump says these things. And I love the president, and I'm going to vote for him. And I'm not voting for him just because Biden is bad. Last time I voted for President Trump just because I hated Hillary Clinton. I don't really hate Joe Biden. I kind of feel bad for him. I kind of pity him. I believe Hillary Clinton is an evil person. I think Joe Biden is a pretty bad dude. A bad hombre, as the president would say. But he's done a lot of horrible things over the 47 years that he's been in politics. But I don't hate him. But my motivation initially to vote for President Trump, I thought I really didn't think he was going to be a conservative. I really thought he, like Glenn Beck said, that he was going to be a more like a Teddy Roosevelt progressive. And he proved himself wrong. Despite his brash style that was the opposite of Calvin Coolidge's style, he embraced a lot of Coolidge's policies of small government as much as was possible. It's very difficult to do this these days, the way Coolidge did, but we can keep cool with Coolidge. Anyway, and Glenn Beck apologized to the president for this. Glenn Beck didn't even vote for him, but he's voting for him this time. I did vote for the president, and I'm proud that I did, even though initially I didn't like him. I just hated Hillary Clinton. Now I like him, and I think he's doing an incredible job for America. And I think the things that he's doing vis-a-vis Middle East peace and Israel and other countries is good for America and good for the world. And I recognize the value of the State of Israel as a strategic ally, politically and militarily, for the United States. So I appreciate that. But I can still criticize him for saying things like calling Netanyahu, when he's speaking to Jewish American audiences, calling Netanyahu your prime minister. No, sir. I do not have a prime minister. I have a president, and my president is Donald J. Trump, and I'm proud that my president is Donald J. Trump. When you say, I love your country, my country is the United States of America. My family has been here since the 1850s. At least on one side of my family. And before that, they came from Poland, or in other parts of my family, they came from Italy, they came from Hungary, they came from Germany. They didn't come from Israel. They didn't come even from Eretz Yisrael. The closest ancestor I could find that was in Eretz Yisrael. I have an ancestor, I believe in the 1700s, was the chief rabbi of Belgrade and the chief rabbi of Temeshvar, and his name was Reb Levi Yerushalmi, and I believe his father's name was Reb Yitzchok, and if the name was Yerushalmi, I guess they came from Yerushalayim. So, although I know my yichus is going back to David HaMelech and going back to Aaron HaKohen. Of course, Aaron HaKohen was never in Eretz Yisrael, but his children were. But David HaMelech, I know from my Zayda, my Baba's side, my Baba's a Bas Kohen, so we know it goes back to Aaron HaKohen. And my Zayda's side, I have the whole Yichus going back to David HaMelech, not directly Ben Acher Ben, but I have my ancestry going back to King David, which means I have the ancestry back to Adam and Eve. That I can trace at least one line of my family all the way to Adam and Eve. And it's on the Genie website, genie.com, because I know I'm Einikel from Maharal MiPrague, I'm Einikel from Chavas Yoer, and from Maharal MiPrague, and from Maharal MiPrague you can go back to David HaMelech, and the whole Yichus is there on the internet. Not that this matters so much, but my point is, also, the modern day state of Israel has nothing to do with David HaMelech. It has nothing to do with Ezra HaSefer. It has nothing to do. This is not a third Commonwealth. This is nothing. There's no Beis HaMikdash. There's no Sanhedrin, not a real Sanhedrin. And even if there were, the Jews who lived in, let's say, in Bavel during the time of Bayis Sheni, although they would have a religious devotion to the Beis HaMikdash, and they would have a religious obligation to follow the rulings of the Sanhedrin, politically they would be loyal citizens of whatever country they live, whether they lived in Babylonia, or they lived in Alexandria in Egypt, or wherever else the Jews lived. And there were big Jewish communities outside of the Holy Land in the time of the Second Temple. And these Jews were Jewish in their religion, but they had no political connection to whoever, let's say, the Hasmonean kings, for example. Let's say, in the time of the Hasmonean kings, in the Second Temple, a Jew who lived in Alexandria Shel Mitzrayim was an Egyptian subject. Cleopatra, let's say, would have been the queen, or whoever, I'm not sure. I mean, the Gemara does mention a few queens named Cleopatra, not necessarily the famous one that was played by what's her name? I can't remember the name of the actress now. She was a Gioris. Liz Taylor, right? She was Jewish. She converted to Judaism. Right? There were a few queens named Cleopatra that were mentioned in Chazal. Both in the Bavli and Yerushalmi both mention Cleopatra. But anyway, that's what we're talking about here. Irish will helfen that because I know Rabbonim and I know Erlich Yidden who are uncomfortable voting for President Trump because of these statements that he's made about Israel and American Jews. And I don't blame them for being upset. I just feel that it's improper to ruin America because of such a small, when everything else is good. But I understand, so I kind of hope that the president should apologize for this, because it's very offensive, very, very offensive, and at least recognize that within the Jewish community there are different views, meaning, he should be educated at least that, he's from New York, that, that the Jews in Williamsburg have nothing. They all voted for, not all, but I'm saying a large majority of the Jews in Williamsburg voted for the president, and they support him and they love him, but they are not pro-Israel, and it's not an issue of loyalty, this and that, to Israel. It's just the opposite. It's an issue of loyalty to God and loyalty to America. Second to our loyalty to God, our loyalty to God comes first. And that's what we have to talk about. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. We'll see you later.